All right, so welcome everyone to this new next talk from our great speaker, Professor Leticia Oliveira. She's from the Universidade Federal Fluminense in Brazil, and she will be presenting her work in our first session of diversity and inclusion in STEM. Thank you very much, Dr. Leticia, for your participation here. She will be taking questions in Portuguese and English, so please leave your messages in the chat. And it's with you, Dr. Leticia. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you so much. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers, especially Lina Caballero, for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here. And I will share my screen with you. Hope you can see that. This is working?
It's working great.
Okay, thank you. So I am Leticia Oliveira. I'm from Brazil, Rio de Janeiro, and I'm a neuroscientist. And today I will talk about why do gender, minorities, and diversity matter. Actually, I will focus on gender. So regarding gender in science, you have two major problems. The first one is the low representation in the leadership positions. And the low representation, the second one is the low representation in STEM. The first one is also known as scissor effect, as you can see here, the shape of the scissor. This is a data from Brazil. And you can see here that in the beginning of the career, women represented the majority. So among undergraduate students and graduate students, women are the majority. But as the career progresses, the number of women diminishes, and especially for political positions and for high levels positions. For instance, in Brazil, we have 0% of women as a Minister of Science and Technology. So it's a very hard situation to deal with. I have a lot of factors that can explain this scissor effect. One of them is maternity penalty, harassment in the academia, in the institutions, universities, and the implicit bias and the gender stereotype. Today we will talk a little bit more about this one, implicit bias and gender stereotype and its consequences. So I have to give you in the first place, definition of implicit bias. So you can see here, the implicit bias can be considered as an automatically activated information that can shape and guide people's impressions, judgments, feelings, and intentions. So if I show you a picture of a mouse, and after that a caricature, probably you can see here the ears, the face of the mouse, the tail. But if I change the previous presentation and I show you a man in a profile, and show you the same caricature, maybe I can change your perception. And maybe you can see here the glasses, the nose, the face of the man. So the caricature are the same, but the previous presentations change the perception. And our brains work all the time with this kind of information. Incidental information implicitly change our perception. This is a work from our lab. Isabella Mokaiber was a Ph.D. of mine. And we presented to healthy volunteers, participants, mutilated body pictures are very unpleasant pictures in two contests. One contest, we told the participants that the pictures were fictitious from movies and cinema. And another contest, we told the participants that the pictures are real. And we work with neuroimage, fMRI. And as you can see here, both amygdala and insula, the brain regions very related to emotional processing in the brain, these regions change the activations depends on the context that we presented, the pictures. So in the real context, we have a difference between neutral and unpleasant pictures, both for amygdala and insula, but this difference disappears in the fictitious conditions. So you can change the perception, we can change the brain activations depending on the incidental implicit information that are presented in the context. Well, but another important question, is there any evidence that our behavior can be manipulated without our awareness? So I can change the perception, but it's possible to change the behavior. There is a lot of papers on the literature, because the time I give you one example. In this case, the participants had to do a very simple task, build sentence with scrambled words displayed on the computer screen. And the participants were divided in two groups. So one group read pro-social words like give, rel, plant, it's called a pro-social condition. And another group of participants read words are not with nothing special. So it's a control condition. And after that, the participants were invited to make a donation for poor university students. So you can see here, the number of the participants who made the donation was higher in the pro-social condition. So a participant didn't have any clue about that, it's totally implicit, but the reason, the fact of being working this kind of pro-social words change the behavior, change the decision. And this implicit bias can explain the dissociation between what a person explicitly believes and would like to do and the hidden influence of implicit negative association that are in their thoughts and actions. So all of us would like to think that we will treat these people equally, but it's not, probably is not true, because we have inside of us, without our control, so implicit informations, implicit influence that make change our behavior related to these people. Depends on the race, depends on the gender, or the way the people are dressed, for instance. And this kind of implicit information that change our brain, our perception, and our behaviors help to construct, to build the implicit stereotype. What is it? Implicit attribution of a particular qualities of an individual for being a member of some social group. So because the people is woman, they behave in that way. So because it's black, the behavior will be in the same, that way. It starts early, as you can see here. So implicit stereotypes are shaped by experience and are based on implicit learned association that are socially constructed. So these implicit stereotypes are from culture and start early. If you Google brinquedo de menina em português, ou girl's toy, versus Google brinquedo de menino, ou boys' toys, you can see a very different results. For girls, first of all, the color, pink color, and all the activities are related to take care of the others, cooking or cleaning. And for boys is a very different story. And what the consequences of the implicit gender stereotypes? Why it's a bad thing? Well, because they interfere in our evaluation. This is a very famous work that was presented before in the first section, and it's a study made by Moses Rakuzin, published in PNAS, and they send the applications, CVs, resumes change only the male or the female in the front page. So John Smith, for instance, or Mary Smith, they send these CVs for professors, men and women, from university, for the professor rated the application materials of a student for a laboratory manager position, so for a job. As you can see here, competence, reliability, and mentoring are very different, depends on the name on the CV. The male name has higher scores in comparison with female name in the same application. The application is the same, we just changed the first name. It's very impressive. And the salary, of course, is much bigger, much higher for men in comparison with female name. And very recently, Eaton and collaborators replicate this data. I think it's important to replicate this kind of study. And more, they tested names with Latin names, Asian names, Black names, and so on. And they found an interaction between candidate gender and race, especially if the evaluators were physics. Black women and Latinx women and men, so in this case, in the Latinx, men was affected as well, were rated the lowest in reliability compared to the others. So in this case, for the Latin people, even men are affected. And the second reason why is so damaged to have the implicit bias and the stereotype is because it could decrease the performance. So it's a phenomenon, a very known phenomenon called stereotype threat that represents an implicit feeling of threat for being parts of a group normally seen as negative and are excluded from that context. So we can see in this picture, what are I'm saying. It's a sensation of exclusion or not belonging. This is very critical because, as Tomasello said, primates are social, but human beings are ultra social animals. So it's very important to take that in account, because we depend on each other for the survival. We don't have claws, sharp teeth, physical strength, or speed. Our strength comes through social interaction. So it's very important for our species. So the sensation of exclusion is very, very, very bad. Just to show you, I don't know if you will working, a video showing an altruistic behavior. I don't know if you, I think that the video is not working. So, okay. Yes. You can see here a young child, less than 2 years, and he will help the experimenter. Let's see. It's a very altruistic behavior and start early, as you can see here. This child didn't know the experimenter. It's because our species are so dependent on the social interaction. It's very cute. Try to help. Kids trying to help. So human beings have a constant motivation to form and maintain lasting, positive, and meaningful interpersonal relationships, the need of the belonging. This is very important for us. And this is the reason why social exclusion is alarming, distressing, and painful. I can show you one example, experimental example of that phenomenon, stereotype threat. So in this paper, they tested 3 groups of participants with women and men. In the first group, problem solve condition, they told the participant that the task, the math task is a problem solve exercise for a study of a general aspect of cognitive process. It's not about you, it's not diagnostic. It's something general to study the cognitive process. As you can see here, the performance, there is no difference between man and woman in this condition. And they did a second condition, math test condition, when the participant was told that this is as a standard test for gender difference in math performance. So here we created the stereotype threat very, very strongly. And you can see here, guess what? Women decrease in performance in comparison with men. So probably because the stereotype threat generates here. But the good news is the third condition, and you can, they called it teaching intervention condition, and the participant was explaining about the phenomenon. The participant was told that it's important to keep in mind that if you are feeling anxious while taking this test, this anxiety could be result of these negative stereotypes that is very known in society and have nothing to do with your actual ability to do well on the test. So it's very interesting because in this case, we can, the decrease of the performance disappear. So knowing is half of the battle, as the title of the paper said. Yet the reason why I'm here now, because I have talking about this phenomenon. This is very important to know about it, to deal with this kind of problem. It's important to know that implicit bias and stereotype threat can occur not only with gender, but race or ethnicity, socioeconomic level, disabilities, and so on. And why change this scenario? Why? Well, first of all, for justice, women are the half of population in the world. In Brazil, Black people are half of population also. So just for justice, it's enough, but more, because diversity matters. There is a lot of papers published recently that show that diversity, gender or racial diversity, leads to a better science. That makes sense because diversity broadens views, raises new issues to be investigated. So it's almost logical. And I give you just one example of that. I like a lot of this example. Women have this disrupted research on bird song, and their finds show how diversity can improve all kinds of science. So for many years, scientists consider bird song to be a male trait, but research studies coordinated by women show that is not true. So I think this is a very good example of how diversity matters. Well, we have just published, actually, we have this paper accepted last week, and I think it's coming out in a few days. And the title is Facing Racism and Sexism in Science by Fighting Against Social Implicit Bias, a Latin and Black women perspective. We published this paper, and all the issues that I mentioned here are included in this paper, so you can read if you have interest. And I would like to share a revision that I received from that paper. So reviewer 2, the famous reviewer 2, sent us such wonderful revision, and you can read the revision here. And he or she finished with muitos parabéns, amei. When I saw that revision, we were very emotional and very happy because probably I will never ever will receive such a revision like that again. So we are so happy. And also in this paper, we included some recommendations. For instance, I put a little few examples here. Recommendations to editors and reviewers of scientific journals. So this is one example. Observe the number of publications submitted by negatively stereotyped groups and ensure that this information is being collected and analyzed in your scientific journal. When referring someone to an important position, expand your list and think in someone from a negative stereotype group, minority groups, who could occupy that position of power. Think twice. Arguing that these people do not exist is not a valid argument in most cases. Recommendations to members of a selection committees. The evaluation committee must be balancing into races, ethnicity, and gender compositions. For interviews, committee members should ask questions related to professional issues. Personal questions like family planning should not be asked. So few examples of the recommendation that I included in the paper. And I'd like to finish to thank the very wonderful and special women for me, Eliane Volchan, Fátima Ertal, and Karen Calaza, from Federal University of Rio de Janeiro and Universidade Federal Fluminense, in my university. And they built the presentation and wrote the paper with me. So I'm very happy to be with them. And I'd like to thank our working group in Brazil, Women and Science, Grupo de Trabalho Mulheres na Ciência, in Portuguese. This is our website, and we have been working inside the institution to improve the gender equality. And I can talk now about a little bit more after the presentation. And I'd like to thank Parenting in Science. I'm very proud of taking part of this movement. This is the contacts. And that's it. Obrigada, thank you. This is my email, and it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
All right, Dr. Leticia, thank you very, very much. Such a wonderful talk. We have a few questions here. You were worried about the timing, but you finished 2 minutes earlier than your.
Oh,
so it's fine. It's perfect.
So
fine.
Good to know.
Yeah. So I have a question from Lina Caballero, by the way. So how strategies will be necessary to integrate female qualities into leadership criteria in academia and science?
Yeah, it's very, very tough question. I think you have to change in the many levels. We have a society level. We have to change the culture, because the sexism and the racism is it's present in the culture, in the society. And you have to change the institutions, and you have to change ourselves. I think we have 3 levels of changes that we need to do.
Perfect. Another question from Lina as well, and this is something that I was going to ask as well. So how to work on inclusion in STEM areas without discussing men, masculinities, and men's practices?
I think we have to discuss this. It's important to discuss, because men is part of the problem. Violence against the woman, micro-violence, moral harassment, and men is a great part of the problem, actually. So we have to include the man in this discussion. It's very important.
I agree. Another one, now in Portuguese, da Maria Eduarda de Andrade Borges. Obrigado, doutora Letícia, palestra maravilhosa, mostrando um pouco da realidade que encontramos no Brasil. É muito nítida essa desigualdade dentro das universidades brasileiras e na própria sociedade. Seguimos lutando para que as coisas mudem no futuro próximo. Mais uma observação.
Muito obrigada. Ai, adoro falar em português, gente, muito melhor, né?
Melhor.
Eu entendo espanhol, tá? Se alguém quiser fazer pergunta. I can understand in Spanish.
So if anyone wants to make question in español, in Spanish, si alguien quiere hacer una pregunta en español, también Leticia
I can
puede.
understand and I answer in Portuguese probably.
Perfeito.
But I think you can understand.
Tem uma pergunta aqui da Genilda Castro de Omena Neta. Como lidar com situações que pesquisadores mulheres duvidam da capacidade de conclusão de pós-graduandas grávidas? Pesquisadores ou pesquisadoras mulheres duvidam da capacidade de conclusão de pós-graduandas grávidas.
Muito boa pergunta. Esse é outro estereotipo, né? Um estereótipo que existe muito, né? A ideia de que uma mulher que tem filho ou que é grávida, eu faço parte do movimento Parenting Science, no Brasil, acho que talvez você conheça, então a gente discute muito isso. Nós temos que quebrar. Primeira coisa importante, ter um filho vai ter consequências esperadas para a produtividade dessa mãe. Há uma queda de produtividade, o Parenting Science mostrou isso, há uma queda esperada da produtividade que deve ser compensada com políticas de apoio à maternidade. Então, a primeira coisa que nós devemos fazer, na UF nós estamos fazendo, a UF, como eu comentei, né, nós temos um grupo de trabalho chamado Mulheres na Ciência, temos trabalhado há 3 anos, e nós temos colocado, eu posso disponibilizar até um relatório executivo bem detalhado que a gente tem, e nós fizemos uma série de políticas de apoio à maternidade, né? E à medida que a gente fala da maternidade dentro da academia, dentro das instituições, da universidade, esse estereótipo ele vai sendo desconstruído. Então, nós precisamos fazer políticas de apoio, nós precisamos dizer que a maternidade tem um impacto, né? A maternidade não é o problema é a falta de políticas de apoio, mas ela tem um impacto. Nós precisamos lidar com esse impacto, compensar as mães acadêmicas, né, por essa queda, então fazer fatores de correção na hora de avaliar o currículo, aumentar o tempo de avaliação do currículo, há várias possibilidades. Eu sou assessora científica na FAPERJ, né, que é uma agência estadual de fomento, e a gente tem trabalhado isso na FAPERJ também, né, editais que levem em conta políticas de apoio à maternidade. Então, a maternidade é um ponto muito importante para ser trabalhado para que a gente consiga alcançar a equidade de gênero. Obrigada pela pergunta.
Muito bom. Ela comentou aqui que é necessário equidade e agradeceu. Então, obrigada pela resposta. Eu acho que a gente está mais ou menos... tem mais uma perguntinha aqui, em inglês agora. From Maite Soto Quiroga, the question is, any recommendations for things STEM students can do to help bridge the gap and fight implicit bias while they are still studying?
Very good question. As we can do a test, implicit test from Harvard that measure that implicit bias that all of us have. So I think this is a good thing to do, and try to make a reflections about our actions in the world. How many times we discriminate some people because the gender or the race or the disability. If I think hard, I can find inside of us this situation when it happens. And I think this reflection, this thought is very important to change. We have to change ourselves, but it's important to say that the culture have to change as well, because we reproduce, the brain reproduce the incidental informations and change our behavior.
Perfect. So I think we are almost in the time we were supposed to end the session. If there is I think we have more 5 minutes if anyone wants to put more questions, or you can also post your questions on Discord. We will try to make those questions reach Professor Leticia.
Yes, you can send an email for me as well.
An email as well, yeah. If you can send me the email afterwards for this assessment from Harvard, I can post that in Discord as well, Professor.
Okay. Mhm.
I can try to make that happen. So I would like to thank you a lot for
It
your
was my
participation.
pleasure.
What
It
a
was my
great
pleasure.
talk. Yeah, very mind-opening. I really enjoy it. And that's it. I hope everyone enjoy our poster section next in Discord. There's a lot of posters, very interesting posters, both in diversity inclusion in STEM and also some posters on paleontology, which will be our session from the afternoon. So please join us in Discord, and that's it. Thank you very much, Dr. Leticia.
Thank you.